The Marc Cucurella situation remains open. The player himself is fully focused on the World Cup, and Fabrizio Romano confirms that Chelsea are in no pressure to sell unless a proper bid arrives. Enzo Maresca's Man City have supposedly made an inquiry for Malagusto, and we're going to talk about why this one actually makes sense. Everton are considering triggering the £25 million release clause for Tyrique George, with other clubs supposedly in the running, and a little update on some of Chelsea's academy prospects, with Chelsea supposedly looking to send Mheuka out on loan, but also to give the likes of Reggie Walsh and Max Derry a shot in the team this season. And at the end of the video, we're going to talk about your thoughts on what you think Chelsea should do with Marc Cucurella and Enzo Fernandez. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sink, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And the Marc Cucurella situation, supposedly not a foregone conclusion, so let's get into it. Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Fabrizio Romano. The Marc Cucurella situation remains open. If a good bid arrives for Chelsea and for the player, he could still leave the club. The player was respectful today when asked questions and will not force a move. Atleti love Cucurella and are on it. So this is only good news for us if he goes or if he stays. If a move for Cucurella doesn't materialise before the World Cup, chances are he plays with Spain, one of the top two best teams in the world. Obviously, they won the Euros and he was a huge part of that. If they get deep into the competition and he puts good performances in, that is going to raise his price. We've seen amounts of money floating around at the moment from Atletico, like 43 mil, and Chelsea want 50 million euros and this, that and the other. But the truth of the fact is, we're not in a rush to sell. Marc Cucurella is in a similar situation to Enzo Fernandez, where he's got 3 years left on his deal and is unable to just force a move out. But Chelsea are obviously looking to be respectful to the player, and they won't stop him from leaving if a proper bid arrives to make sure that we can reinforce that position. Fabrizio Romano also posted this, which is from the aforementioned interview at the World Cup. Marc Cucurella on his future. I am happy where I am. I told my camp not to tell me anything now. I don't want to know anything. Barcelona or Atletico? Next question. So I love this. And even if we do sell Marc Cucurella, I won't be too mad, because what he's doing here is the polar opposite of what Enzo Fernandez did, right? I've had a few chats with a couple of guys in my comments recently that are like, Enzo Fernandez didn't do anything wrong. It's like, there are media trained answers that you are supposed to give to be respectful to the guys that are paying your wages. Marc Cucurella is doing the right thing here. We know he wants a move and we know he'd be interested in it, but he's not looking to force one, and he's saying he's happy where he is. So if Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, whoever don't come in with the proper bid for him, he's going to stay in the squad and he's still going to be an important part of it. That is incredibly counter to what Enzo Fernandez did in the last international break, where he flirted and twerked, as Jay from Talking Chelsea likes to say. He was twerking at Real Madrid. And it's true, right? Because for anyone that says, oh, he didn't say anything wrong, just that he wants to live in Real Madrid, like, this is the proper, respectful, media-trained answer that you are supposed to give. It's one of those, like, Marc Cucurella is not looking to force this move. There are conversations being had between him, the club, and obviously the clubs that are interested in him. And like I say, he's just doing the absolute right thing. Like, personally, I do not want to lose Marc Cucurella. I think that especially for a Xabi Alonso system, where Marc Cucurella could play lots of different positions really well, I think he could be a massive important part of the team next season. But I also understand it from his point of view. No Champions League next season. We aren't looking at challenging from the Premier League in the immediate future. He's a La Masia graduate. He won the Euros with Spain. Spain is his home, and there are offers potentially from two of the biggest clubs in Spain, one of which being the league leaders and the other being Atletico Madrid, who are always fighting for it. So it makes sense that he's potentially thinking about wanting to go back to Spain. Like, I totally get that and respect that. He's given us a lot of good years. He's been one of our best players. But like I say, for me, the main thing with this whole situation is look at how Marc Cucurella is dealing with this situation versus Enzo Fernandez. Enzo Fernandez tried to put Chelsea against the ropes, and he's in an even more difficult situation than Marc Cucurella is. So Enzo Fernandez is unlikely to be able to force a move out unless someone comes in with 100 mil plus for him. Marc Cucurella may well raise his value at the World Cup, but even so, we're not going to put a crazy amount of money on top of him like we are with Enzo Fernandez. So like I say, I'd be loath to lose Marc Cucurella, but I wouldn't be really annoyed to see him go, because he hasn't caused trouble. When he came out and spoke in the international break, he wasn't talking about wanting to go to other clubs or intimating that kind of thing. He laid it out on the table, the issues with the squad, the issues with Blueco, and the reason that the team was struggling. It was simple, it was eloquent, and I had no issue with what he said, because I think it was really brave from him, because he called out Blueco, but he did it in a way that put the team first, which is the most important thing. So guys, let me know what you think about the Marc Cucurella situation in the comments. Like I say, for me, loath to let him go, but if we get a decent amount of money from him for an Atletico Madrid or for a Barcelona, it just is what it is. And guys, if you've made it this far into today's episode of the Stamford Sink, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so next up, there's some interesting news about Malo Gusto. Transfer News Live posted this via L'Equipe. L'Equipe obviously is one of the biggest outlets for sports and football in France. Manchester City have made an inquiry for Malo Gusto as they explore right-back options ahead of next season. The France international is among the Chelsea players who could leave this summer, with increased competition for places at Stamford Bridge casting doubt over his long-term future. City are monitoring the situation closely. So there's a few interesting things to break down here. I think the first one is just to talk about the City link, right? So a few of our players have been linked with Man City because Enzo Maresca's there. Marc Cucurella, Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, all of these players have been linked to City, and none of those really make sense for a few reasons. One, Cole Palmer, for instance, wasn't really his best self under Enzo Maresca, and you know that just based on what Cole Palmer said when Liam Rosenior came in and saying about how he likes Liam because he lets him play with freedom. Cole Palmer is not the kind of player that likes to play for a manager like Enzo Maresca, who is very, very structured tactically and likes everyone to have an idea of what they're going to do in every single situation and doesn't really give them the freedom to express themselves. Enzo Fernandez and Marc Cucurella made a little bit more sense from the player perspective because they were two of the players that flourished really well in his system. Marc Cucurella obviously being really versatile, and Enzo Fernandez really enjoying that, starting in a number 6, but, going into the box midfield and essentially being a dual 10. But then that begs the question about the 115, right? What's going to happen with City next season? Like, they're obviously looking at making this huge bid for Elliot Anderson at the moment, which wouldn't necessarily not make sense because he's not like a Champions League player. He's going to be really expensive, but if City spend a season outside of Europe because they get a points deduction, Elliot Anderson is a young player and will back himself long term to be part of a City team that gets back there. With Malo Gusto, this one kind of makes sense. It wouldn't be an outrageous amount of money, and Enzo Maresca absolutely loved him. Look, it was one of the difficult things about watching Maresca's football is where's Malo Gusto going to play today? But it was so important to Maresca that he had a player like Malo Gusto in his system. Although often starting from right back and occasionally in midfield, he would play at right back, at 6, 8, 10, left wing, shadow striker. I'm not even making this up, genuinely. At some point in some game, across our time with Maresca, Malo Gusto played all of these positions, right? And Maresca really likes him because he's so versatile. He's also quite young, which again makes sense because Maresca, Man City look like they're building a young team, don't they? With Rayan Cherki and Nico Riley, and if they get Elliot Anderson, Malo Gusto to Man City. Now, what I think about us losing Malo Gusto, I'll get on into in a second. But that link makes sense to me. We got him for like 20 mil a few years ago. So if we sell him for 40 mil, 50 mil, because Maresca likes him so much, that would be a huge profit. Now, I know 50 mil maybe is a little bit crazy, maybe 30, 40, something like that. But either way, he represents a big profit. So again, I think it makes sense from the tactical perspective for Maresca because we saw how much he loved him. He was in the first team all the time, playing so many different positions. And he's not going to be super expensive. He's young. Like, it makes sense, even if we consider the 115, for instance. I don't think Man City will get expelled from the Premier League, but I do think that they could be in a position where they lose enough points not to get into the Champions League next season. So yes, I think it makes sense. Now, what do I actually think about losing Malo Gusto? The issue I have with it is it feels like it leaves us quite thin on the ground in terms of right back / right wing back positions. If we play a 4 at the back, I could see Reece James playing that position because it's not all going to be about bombing up and down the wing. Like, I don't really think he's got the athleticism or the fitness for that anymore, and that is one of the things that Malo Gusto is quite good for. If we play a 3 at the back, Reece James is never playing that right wing back situation, and if already that leaves Malo Gusto as our only right-sided, right-footed, at the very least, right wing back. Now, we're in the moment before Alonso has kind of done anything, right? So what we're all talking about at the moment is who, if we play that 3 at the back system, who could play in that right wing back spot? A lot of people are pointing to Pedro Neto and Giovanni Quenda, which I don't hate the idea of because Xabi Alonso's wing backs were very, very attacking, but it's the inverted thing that I'm not 100% sure about. I can't think off the top of my head a really successful 3 at the back team that had an inverted wing back, essentially. So, interesting one there. There's also some talk about potentially Jamie Gittins being able to play that role, because if you look at Jeremy Frimpong, for instance, Jeremy Frimpong, not a defender, not a right back. Similar to Victor Moses in a way where he also wasn't a right back or a defender, but played that role really well. The problem if we sell Malo Gusto and we don't go for an inverted, kind of wing back, then we then need to buy 2 right wing backs. So, it's one of those, isn't it? Like, Xabi Alonso is going to want a good balance of players in his team, and if we sell Gusto, Does Xabi Alonso then come in and say, right, well, now I need 2 right wing backs because we're playing 3 at the back? And at the end of the day, it's all speculation because it could be anything at the moment. It could be a 4-4-2, could be 3 at the back, could be 4 at the back, could be 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3. So many permutations because Xabi Alonso's football isn't necessarily based on the formation. It's based on the profile of the players that he's got, right? And like a strong systemic foundation of possession-based football with a high press and allowing his players to dynamically alter the game depending on what's going on, rather than Maresca, who was very much like, you be here and when this thing happens, you change and do this. So the Malo Gusto situation is actually one of the more fascinating ones. When you think about Xabi Alonso's most successful team, his wing-backs in Grimaldo and Jeremy Frimpong got like 50 GA or something like that between them. What was it? Jeremy Frimpong was 14 goals, 10 assists for 24, and Grimaldo was 12 goals and 14 assists. So yeah, literally 50 GA between the wing backs. And if we, like I say, the profile of the wing backs that he likes to play, very, very high scoring attacking, and Gusto doesn't really fit that. I just think it's really interesting. If it's just me at the moment, I keep him because, like I say, I just don't see it. We're already talking about only looking to go in for a few players or whatever, and I know we'll go out for more, but we don't really want to completely, tear the team apart and put it back together in one window. It needs to be done over a little period of time. So guys, let me know what you think about the Malo Gusto situation. I find it fascinating. Like I say, this is the first time that City has been linked to one of our players that I actually think it makes sense. Like, I didn't buy the Cole Palmer thing. I didn't really buy Enzo Fernandez or Cucurella being linked there either, but to me, just because of what we saw Maresca do with Malo Gusto in the Chelsea team, this one actually makes sense. Right, next up, we're going to talk about Tyrique George. Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Kieran Gill. Everton consider a move to trigger £25 million option on Tyrique George deal, with clubs primed to enter the race. George is prepared to leave Chelsea permanently in his desire for regular first-team football. Yep. Get it? Just makes sense, doesn't it? I don't think anyone really expected Tyrique George to find his way back into the team. We nearly sold him at the back end of last season. Now, last time I said this, I said that we pulled out of it, but I actually think it was Fulham that pulled out of it, didn't they? Because they signed someone else. If you remember exactly what happened with the Tyrique George situation and Fulham last summer, let me know in the comments. But even then, there was, talk about Bayer Leverkusen, Red Bull Leipzig, a couple of European clubs being interested in him. Fulham might well be credited with an interest again. They're going to have a new manager in. There's, a couple of teams coming up from the Premier League that might find him an interesting option as well. And obviously Everton have had him on loan for the last half of a season, and he didn't exactly tear up trees, but for a player of his still, potential at 25 mil, with Premier League experience at a reasonably high level, Champions League goals and stuff, we'll remember the Ajax performances and some of those things. It makes sense, doesn't it? And that is, that's 25 mil on the books for Chelsea. So he's the kind of player that is absolutely just going to go this season. I liked Tyrique George. He was just never really given a proper crack at the whip in his position at Chelsea. Like, he always just played striker, and put in Tyrique George as striker, I used to see the team sheets and just be like, Tyrique George again, because he just became such a passenger, right? Like, it's definitely not his position. He is a winger. And the only time we saw Tyrique George play on wing last season was that aforementioned Ajax game in the Champions League. And he was only on for like 20 minutes and he looked brilliant. Do you know what I mean? So, really interesting one here. I think it's probably not a bad shout from Everton to trigger that, to be honest. But either way, I don't think we're going to struggle to sell Tyrique George. I do think he will leave this season. I do think we'll get 25 mil for him. And I wish him all the best. So, from one academy player to another, we're going to talk about Mheuka. Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Nazar Cancella. Mheuka is set to go out on loan. So we did see Mheuka a couple of times get minutes in the first team, very cursory minutes in like cup games and stuff. In the academy, he's been absolutely smashing it. Like, he's been one of our best academy strikers for ages now. He looks really, really, really good. I'll be really interested to see. I think he's only 17, 18, like really, really young player. I don't think a Premier League loan is right for him. Yeah, I wouldn't say no to like a Strasbourg loan, but ultimately I think if he could get even a League One or a Championship loan would be really good, because he needs to go out now and fight his way into a team, and he's still young enough that he can spend a season at a lower tier, and he's still growing, he's still developing, he's still got a lot to learn, but he needs to move away from academy football now because he just dominates it. Do you know what I mean? It's just one of those where he's so far above and beyond the majority of the players in the kind of league and system that he's playing in at the moment. It's absolutely time to get him somewhere else and get him some game time. He looks like a really, really good talent. Whether that can be transposed from academy level to professional football at the end of the day is another question. And, you know, we've seen a lot of academy players that looked amazing. Do you remember Josh McEachran? One of those, do you know what I mean? But yeah, Mheuka, I really like the look of him. I really want him to go out and get a loan. I don't even really think it matters where to be completely honest. I wouldn't imagine any Premier League teams are coming for him. But League One or Championship or somewhere, you know, Strasbourg, something like that makes sense to me. But either way, I'm very excited to watch his development next season. Now, with Mheuka potentially going out, Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Nazar Kinsella as well. Reggie Walsh, wingers Ryan Kavuma-McQueen and Jesse Derry, and defender Landon Emenalo are likely to get a chance in pre-season under Xabi Alonso. So this is great news. This is absolutely great news. Jesse Derry made a cameo towards the end of the season, unfortunately got injured, which was a shame, but he was genuinely one of our best looking players on the pitch, which for an 18-year-old lad is worrying. Reggie Walsh looks absolutely phenomenal as well in the very short spurts we've seen of him so far. He looks really comfortable on the ball, and he doesn't necessarily look like, although he is diminutive and he's not exactly a massive boy at the moment, silky, really good touch, good passing, and there's definitely potential there. Ryan Kavuma-McQueen we haven't seen as much of, and Landon Emenalo also we haven't seen as much of, but it's good to see that already Xabi Alonso is picking out academy players that he wants to give a shot in pre-season and see if we can keep them around for the upcoming season. Jesse Derry to me looks like a particular talent, if I'm being honest. Reggie Walsh I think is like 17. He made his Chelsea debut at 16, absolutely wild. But Jesse Derry, just from his last cameo performance, albeit the one where he got injured, like I say, he just looked like one of the only players on the pitch that looked like getting close to making something happen. And it feels like he's really young, isn't he? He's like 18. But then you think Esteval Willian has just come in and you know, really pushed for the first team as well. I don't necessarily think Jesse Derry is at the same kind of level Esteval Willian is, but it's very possible that we might see a season from Jesse Derry like we did with Esteval last season. I expect Esteval to get into the first team a lot more this season. We've obviously got Giovanni Quenda coming in as well, who I also expect to push for a first team spot, but with our absolute lack of left wingers at the moment, I wouldn't be unhappy to see Jesse Derry get more opportunities. Let me know what you think about our academy boys in the comments. Right, and last up, we're going to talk about your thoughts on Enzo Fernandez and Marc Cucurella. So a couple of days ago, I posted this, which was a poll I put out on my community post. I do those sometimes. Come and get involved, and I'm going to start putting them in the videos a bit more. I asked, what are your thoughts on Fernandez and Cucurella? I gave 3 options: sell Enzo, sell Cucurella, sell them both. Obviously, a lot of you in the comments said keep them both, which is absolutely respectable. I just, in my head at the time, I was like, that's never going to happen. So, what was interesting, of 845 of you that voted, it was quite clear how you feel about these two players. So, 11% just want to sell Enzo and 14% just want to sell Cucurella. So, that's in and around 200-300 of you that think that we should keep one of Enzo and Cucurella. But the overwhelming majority of you, with in and around 500 to 600 votes, want to see both of them go. I'm not surprised, to be completely honest. It's an interesting split, isn't it? Because I think the situation of it is Enzo Fernandez flirted with Real Madrid during that international break, and that was kind of just not cool, was it? It's not really how you should be professional and go about your business. But he had a really good end to the season and was one of our top performers for the entire season. With Marc Cucurella, it's literally kind of the other way around. So Marc Cucurella, although he did come out and say something in that international break, he wasn't obviously trying to flirt with another club and force a move. And as we can see from the news I've talked about today earlier in the video as well, that's not really what he was trying to do. But on the footballing side of it, Marc Cucurella has not been great either. Like he's one of the players that definitely his performances suffered towards the back end of the season, with Liam Rosinia being awful and, you know, Callum McFarlane taking over. Like, Enzo Fernandez stepped up in a footballing sense and Marc Cucurella didn't really. So I just found it really, really interesting, one way or the other, that the majority of you guys want to see both of them sold. For me, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I would really like to keep Marc Cucurella because I just think it's easy to look at Marc Cucurella's bad performances and be like, oh, he's terrible. And we felt the same at the beginning when he came in and wasn't very good. But under the right managers and given the right instruction, and Xabi Alonso is going to be the best manager that we've hired under Blueco so far, I could see Marc Cucurella being such an amazing player for us. Enzo Fernandez, I am here nor there about, essentially. I won't be upset if we keep him because obviously he's got the output there, and if we sell him, again, because of the flirting with Real Madrid, and, you know, my reasoning behind not being bothered if we lose Enzo Fernandez it's not a very popular opinion, I'll be completely honest about that, but I think Enzo Fernandez makes it more difficult to build our team the way we want to. Because Enzo Fernandez really is a deep line midfielder. Like, you know, if you think he's a number 10, tell me in the comments. But for me, I know we play him there, but I don't really think he's a number 10. I think he could be a number 10 for Jose Mourinho at Real Madrid, you know, a la Oscar, for instance. But I don't really see him playing that position for us. So in my head, I always look at him like he's a deep lying midfielder. Now, it's great. Any player that can score 10, 15 goals and get a bag full of assists in a season, yeah, wicked, love that. But from our deep-lying midfield, I think we need a different profile. I think we need a Romeo Lavia if he can stay fit. I think someone like Valentin Barco might actually suit our deep-lying midfield better, because it's going to be more about progressing the ball forward and getting it to our attacking players. Instead of Enzo Fernandez scoring 10, 15 goals a season, what I want is a deep-lying midfielder that facilitates the game and gets the ball to our attackers more, so we can get 5 more goals from João Pedro, 5 more goals from Cole Palmer, 5 more goals from Esteval Willian, 5 more goals from whoever our left winger is, and that I think ultimately would be a net positive in terms of scoring, right? I think the issue with Enzo Fernandez for me is you play him in a deep line position and he's the guy. So all of a sudden you've got another guy that is trying to score goals, because a lot of our players, we haven't got loads of really creative players that focus on progressing the ball or getting assists, right? It's actually one of the reasons I really like the look of Arda Güler. Amazing assister. I just think we're kind of missing on that. You know, Enzo Fernandez, goal scorer. Cole Palmer, on his best day, goal scorer. João Pedro, goal scorer. Esteval Willian, also a goal scorer. Less said about our left wingers, the better, but ultimately, Garnacho, who played the most, is also looking to be more of a goal scorer than an assister. So I think you're just putting too many players on the pitch that want to score goals at the same time, and you haven't got enough that are thinking about how do I progress play and how do we get assists. I really want a guy like a Fabregas. Like, I want a Fabregas in our midfield. Not necessarily that, you know, obviously the game has changed and he wasn't that athletic, but I want a guy who's focused on progressing the ball to our attacking players in order for them to score more goals, rather than someone who's just going to start from deep, crash the box, try and score goals as well, and then we've just got another body in the box or looking to score goals when everyone's already looking to score goals. I just think he makes our team a little bit unbalanced. So like I say, I know that's an unpopular opinion. I'd love to chat with you about it in the comments, but either way, 845 of you are saying sell them both. Nice one, guys. I'm going to wrap the video up there. I hope you've all had an absolutely wicked day, and I'll catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.